This presentation is about the clash of culture between neurodiversity paradigm and mainstream psychology, and what it's like to be a neurodivergent student studying psychology. Recent recognition of the weird ethnographic bias of psychology studies has given rise to the field of cross-cultural psychology. Neurodiversity is a substantially underrepresented and misrepresented culture in psychology studies and mainstream psychology theory and practice. And this translates into harmful lack of inclusion, misunderstanding, and mistreatment of neurodivergent people in everyday life. People may agree or disagree on whether neurodiversity is a good thing, but that neurodiversity exists is just a neutral fact. It is undeniable that there are a range of different kinds of human brains. But there is a non-neutral clash of cultures when it comes to defining neurodivergence. Psychology culture defines neurodivergent people as disordered, whereas neurodiversity culture values and celebrates neurodiversity and neurodivergent people. Social identity theory states that how we view ourselves in society is heavily influenced by our affiliation and identification with groups. Our sense of group fit affects our self-esteem and our sense of belonging, and we emphasise negative aspects of out-group members and exaggerate differences between groups and similarities within groups to promote a positive view of ourselves compared to others. Full disclosure, I am a neurodivergent mother to 2 neurodivergent children. My children and I have sensory, communication and learning differences compared to the average population. I am radically accepting of these differences and will do everything I can to validate and support these differences in my children. I'm proud to be neurodivergent, and I wish for my children to be proud of who they are too. Many of our world's most influential thinkers and leaders right now are neurodivergent. I believe that these people and all other neurodivergent people are amazing not despite their neurodivergence, but because of their neurodivergence. I affiliate with neurodiversity culture, so in line with social identity theory, I'm likely to have an implicit cultural bias in this presentation which exaggerates the negative aspects of psychology culture and the difference between our 2 perspectives and the uniformity within each culture. Applying a social identity theory lens to the evolution of psychology culture, we can see how the search for the most productive humans and the study of developmental norms evolved to exaggerate the negative aspects of atypical behaviour and has positioned people displaying outgroup or atypical behaviour as disordered. The DSM functions to institute this deficit-based mental disorder definition of neurodivergence. Considering social theory again, we can also understand why neurodivergent people who were being outcast created their own positive identity and culture in response. Catchphrases like "nothing about us without us" and "don't mourn for us" provided the foundation of an alternative, empowered and proud identity for neurodivergent people. The internet has been a key driver in connecting and building neurodivergent communities and in the propagation of the neurodiversity movement. Autistic academics began developing alternative, non-deficit-based conceptualizations of autism and neurodivergence, such as monotropism and the double empathy problem. But these 2 cultural perspectives of neurodivergence are not equal. Psychology culture has systematized neuronormative superiority. Without diagnosis of a disorder, supports cannot be provided, which can cause or exacerbate disability for a neurodivergent person. The dominant focus on the disordered aspects of neurodivergent people and how to treat or cure them causes and exacerbates mental health issues, and the dominance of behavioural supports requiring neuronormative compliance rather than celebrating difference has harmful implications for the mental health and vulnerability to abuse for neurodivergent people. The hegemony of psychology culture has caused neurodivergent people to be marginalised, institutionalised, sterilised, lobotomised, subjected to electroconvulsive therapy and endless hours of behavioural therapy. This cultural clash has caused great trauma to neurodivergent people. Ideally, cross-cultural communication considers all participating cultures as valid and supports communication without requiring any communicator to pretend to come from another communicator's culture. I'm studying postgrad psychology with the hope that we can somehow integrate our cultures. I argue for neurodiversity paradigm to be considered and included at every chance, and I utilise my assessments, like this one, to try to refute the dominant theories and provide space for neurodivergent perspective. However, this approach often doesn't work, and I am forced to accept and reproduce psychology theory without any consideration of neurodivergent culture. Like in my last assignment, where I had to create an infographic that showed how attachment styles in infancy were a direct result of the way the primary caregiver was able to relate to the infant's emotional needs. I requested possible ways for me to incorporate the influence of neurotype as a possible cause of attachment and relational differences, but I was told that there wasn't space to do that in the assignment. Attachment differences in neurodivergent children can be explained by differences in social communication, and it is not necessarily due to the responsiveness of the caregiver. Attachment theory applied to neurodivergent people is reductionist, and it's the extension of Kanner's refrigerator mother theory. It's the ultimate of parent blaming, and it is very harmful. I've experienced the harm and hurt of professionals who have offensively assumed I must be a neglectful parent when my children have presented with attachment differences. There needs to be a better understanding and acceptance of how our core neurotype affects our interaction at all levels. Just as we need to be careful of subconscious and institutionalized sexism, racism, and other forms of discrimination, we need to be careful not to assume one neurotype is superior to another. We need to neutrally incorporate the influence of neurotype into our understanding of human psychology and individual experience. Neurodiversity culture and neurodivergent voices exist, but aren't being heard. In order to overcome the current clash of culture between psychology and neurodiversity cultures, I wish for psychology students and practicing psychologists to reflect on the discourse and pathologization of neurodivergence, to recognise and value the contribution of neurodivergent people, to recognise alternative conceptualizations of neurodivergence that aren't solely disordered, and to consider the impact of current discourse on neurodivergent identity, self-esteem, and mental health. I implore you to consider employing neurodiversity affirming language and theories when working with neurodivergent clients, and to prioritise neurodivergent experience. Thank you very much for listening. This is an important topic for me. Thank you.